I guess we wait a few more minutes for everyone to join.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, we're still bang on the hour, and it's hard to know how many folks will show up with MLK Day, but I know some are planning to.
Yeah, we'll see. I can at least see Joshua, Steve, Yogesh, Carsten. I hope you can all hear us.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Perfect.
Just while we're waiting here, Hannes, is the Meet Echo link always the same? Can we just pop it on the data tracker front page so that we don't have these requests all the time?
That's a good question. I don't think so, because this current series has been allocated till I think the week before the IETF meeting, and then we will create another one, and then I assume that there will be a new link. I think it stays the same for the series, but yeah, but that's about it.
It's slightly annoying.
But it's relatively easy to find if you download this iCalendar invite, which I would recommend to do, because then you know exactly when the meeting takes place. You just need to look at the meeting materials or session material, whatever they call it, link, and then everything is there. It's just the agenda update tool just doesn't quite work. So they, I assume they're still working on it. Hey, Kieran. And Ray. Hey, Dick.
How are you?
Yeah, hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
I hope, Kieran, are you going to take meeting minutes today, or is that possible? Or should someone else do it?
No, I can. I can definitely do that.
Cool. Perfect. I see Hank is here now as well. Excellent. Okay. There are a few things. I posted the mail to the list. First of all, welcome to the meeting. We knew that it would be a little bit more difficult to have the meeting today because of the holiday in the US, and I think in the UK maybe as well. But I still want to go through a couple of items. Specifically, there are a few things to look at. The first one is the threat model. We have use cases still, discussions on the list. Raymond contributed a new use case. I had an exchange with Dick, and Ray joined that discussion too. And then we have a couple of open issues on the end pull requests on the architecture document, which I would like to double check which ones of those are still current and which of them might need to be closed. Is there any other topic you would like to talk about today? Hank? Was that you?
Yeah, so this is Hank. Hi, everybody. Yeah, we have a upcoming meeting with a session request. So I think it's at least prudent to at least mention that once, and then have in mind that we have to prepare at some point for that. Some people already are working backwards towards March, so to speak, and to have something to present there.
Yeah, I was hoping to see some discussion on the list about the terminology, which is still an open item, but that didn't quite happen yet. So we'll see what other open issues there are, and so we actually then have something to talk about.
Okay, I think that was on my part to start a thread later today about the terminology discussion again. Initially, I thought that we had a kind of a close meeting to discuss with few selected who contributed actively to RATS SCITT architecture. So I thought maybe that was the better way, but it seems there's no response. So I will try to. There are only few terminologies which are kind of overlapping between RATS and SCITT, and I think maybe at the end of the day we might have to go turn with votes to say what is the community preference on those. So we'll start that discussion thread, and then maybe after 2-3 days what the community respond, we can then go for a vote and make a final call.
Good. Yeah, I submitted the meeting for the IETF meeting, so we'll see how the scheduling goes. Whether hopefully it fits your if you're a remote participant, your time zone preference, or if you're there for a few days or for the whole week. I think then it probably doesn't matter. Hank, should we start with a quick look at the architecture document and the issues /BRs? Are you up for that? Hank?
Yeah, due to this browser, I have a third mute button now, and so yeah, I was talking to you. Yeah, not cool. Sorry. So that because the only thing I actually accomplished last week was to start talking with Monty, understanding his use case thoroughly, and resolving the issues with the use of trust and trust bonds in the first use case. So that can wait. You can look at the architecture first.
Yeah. Do you want to share your screen to show us the open issues and the pull requests, and so we can quickly go through them and
I am physically incapable of sharing. I'm using a tablet.
Okay. Okay. Let me see whether I can get this to work.
You can share that if you want, Hannes.
Oh, that if you could do that, yeah.
Let
That
me
would be
see.
perfect.
Share that.
So I will post the link into the chat.
Screen share actually. Did you get a screen share request from me? Because I think you are the administrator. You need to give me the permission to share.
I did. I just saw in the chat window, Joshua, you had a question about Acme regarding the conflicts. I can add Acme to the conflicts as well, sure. If that helps you. Okay, Hank, go for it.
Yeah, can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It works, yeah.
So shall we go ahead in the sequence, how they appear now?
No, or whatever Hank prefers, he may have a better understanding of what's open or what's not, and which one.
Oh, so yeah, so the architecture reconciliation. So the editors meet to get basically what you just asked for on Wednesday to get on the same page again. There's something there's something we might be it might be easy to drop, like issue 28. Is it 28? Replace TS with SCITT.
Yeah.
So that's both rather old. It precedes the last IETF. And I think questions like this are pretty much resolved. So we're going with transparency services. They have subcomponents like the notary component and other things. And so I think these are simply outdated, and it's not even, I think, useful to trying to recover them. We just will create new items.
Yeah.
on the issue list. I think that's just outdated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Maybe
I'll
we can.
note that, or Kieran hopefully too. So we closed issue 28. That's cool.
Yeah, and then let me look at this here. So compact is an open item. Change the term artifact is a very open item. We haven't settled. So I of course understand we are in the charter scope of software supply chains, but the biggest concerns come from other supply chains. Is that when you use artifact in supply chain for software, artifact is already a built artifact. It's not necessarily the code, and it's arbitrary. So is it the product, or is it the item the consumer effectively gets delivered? So there is a little bit of I think this needs a dedicated session just to get this one done. I assume that asset is also overloaded, so this is a very open topic. And maybe Joshua has some cool ideas from the six stores space, so we cannot conflict with that, for example. I don't know, but I think that's an open discussion we can't do here today. It's hot topics, unfortunately.
But it's good. Who is actually the owner of that topic? Like, who is going to drive that discussion? Is it Kay because she raised it, or because nobody is assigned?
I think this
Good question.
This brings us back to the terminology discussion, right? So we kind of need to pick that up.
Yeah.
So do you want to lump this under the terminology discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
So maybe we can lump this with this one, 37, where we are discussing terminology, SCITT terminology.
Yeah, most of the open issues are actually about terminology in this at the moment.
Okay.
But that's not a bad sign. I think it's everybody wants to not to talk past each other. That's great. But to be honest, as we are focused on software supply chain, I think nothing moved here in the last 1.5 months.
So what? Who is kind of supposed to drive that discussion? The terminology discussion.
So it was actually me, Cedric, Anton, and Hank were discussing this together. So
well, ideally it would be one person to sort of like.
Yeah, that is Yogesh. Yogesh is the lead, and has a few of henchmen at his disposal that have.
Okay.
So if you see here, we did a lot of discussion here. We had a meeting as well, and in fact we had it on this call as well. If you see.
Yeah.
So comments before I left, I just added these comments here as well. So we just need to close it now. We just need to come to terms and agree on something, and then move forward.
But it isn't just rats in SCITT. It's
it's a little bit broader. I think it's
Yeah.
actually 3 issues. The one that we looked at previously, 42. This is 37, which is sort of SCITT rats, and then there was another one, 34, converged claim statement. Seems to be yet another one. What?
There is a proposal to converge claim and statement, but there are.
Yeah, and I think that is coming to so first of all, with all terminology, I can only reiterate what you said, Hannes. The definition is important. The effective term can be a placeholder. So for the claim and statement, I think that's one of the first items of the architecture team, design team meeting. I think we will just go with statement, sign statement, and transparent statement, and then we can find smaller words later and match up to claim again. But I think nobody is that's more than a compromise. It's like nobody's unhappy with that, and just we go from there. So, but that is something. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but that is something that will be the output from our architect's office, because we have to get the proposal in line, put the proposal into the issue, then we can have it here, and then if there's no pushback on it, implement it.
What about the issue number 29? It also says definitions and terms change statement to evidence. Is that sort of again one of those RAT-SCITT things?
Yeah, I think this is a red herring. So Steve, I don't think he can't defend himself. So this is the problem I was highlighting, that that evidence is basically sometimes, so the opaque payload in SCITT is sometimes referred to as evidence coming from supply chain. So if something happened in a supply chain, and that can be a human witness or a video or a signed document, that's evidence. That's conflicting hard with RATs, and I think that is already off the table here. But again, this is one of the old items I would assume are outdated and superseded by other discussions here.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I quickly say something here? To
Of
me,
course.
it seems like this terminology between RATs and SCITT can be resolved by recognizing that the difference has to do with who's making the claims, whether it's peering up or down through the chain. So if you're RAT's view of the world, you're generally the attester device making claims back up to the verifier or the sort of the hosting, and it's very much my very limited view of it is that when you make a claim there, it's the attester claim, it's the and then of the device. So it's looking back. I don't know how to discriminate between the two, but it's a upstream claim made upstream versus downstream. Whereas SCITT, the claims are being made downstream by usually, like if you did have a RATS device coupled with a hosting, service of some kind, then the service would be placing the claim into the SCITT registry downstream versus upstream. So maybe there's a way to discriminate them based on that, because they do seem pretty different. So if you say a claim, in the RATS world being made by that device upstream, it has a different quality than the claims made by, say, a entity submitting software into the SCITT registry. They're quite a bit different. So it'd be good to discriminate those. And I'm just thinking maybe there's a way to do it somehow with an additional adjective or something. I don't have a solution yet.
Yeah, if something comes to your mind, maybe you want to sort of add something to that discussion. Hank, you wanted to say something, right?
Yeah. So, and Ray, that's a very astute observation. I think you said your point of view is limited, but in general, you're correct. So, but SCITT is so versatile that you could put a SCITT instance as a transparency and auditing system in between an attester and the verifier, and it records every evidence ever created that is sent to that verifier. So you can look back 20 years and find everything in that specific communication relationship, for example, or in the trust zone, security domain, where all the attesters record the evidence, for example. Then this upstream will also be in a SCITT transparency service. But that is a very different scenario than we are typically talking about here in the use cases. So, in general, you're correct. I can think of situations where you find a proof of a counter proof. But yeah, I think for broader understanding, your point of view is a good one.
No, I don't. I think we're in agreement there. In other words, I'm not saying that the upstream claims from an attester device can't be placed in the SCITT registry, but the type of thing that you're placing in that claim is different in quality from a claim that would be made by.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So that's why the two. If you're going to use the word claim for everything, then you do start to get into trouble, because the quality of those two things is quite a bit different. And you could call them, you could say upstream claim from an attester device, and just not suggesting that, but lots of adjectives to mean that it's from this device and it's sort of a simplified claim that you need to really check versus a claim. I don't know, maybe they are about the same. I mean, I'm just, I know that in the rats world, they're usually looking back upstream like that. And so when they're thinking of this claim, that's what they're thinking of. And now we're saying, okay, the claims could include these other things of a downstream claim. And maybe they're about the same, though. It's a good point that you're making, that even though the rats, but I'm just thinking that between SCITT world, which includes both types within our concept of claim, that's different than what rats does. And maybe rats should be responsible for adding an adjective. Not sure. But I just wanted to say while I have the floor, and I don't mean to divert the attention of what we're doing, I did post that election stuff on there, and I did have some questions about rats. I'm still trying to explore that. So maybe offline or in the list or something, someone can make some suggestions to me. And so that's probably all we need to do today on it. I just wanted to let you know about that. Thank you.
We have a few folks in the queue. Yogesh, you're first.
Yeah, I'm failing to understand the issue itself. Why it says change statement to evidence. Evidence is something which can be verified, and that's precisely rats is doing, because evidence is a signed set of claims in rats. Statement is just a statement which saying I'm saying this, but once it becomes a signed statement or a claim, then it goes into the SCITT. So I don't know whether this is a valid request coming from Steve, or what was the intent behind requesting this. I'm still struggling to understand this. I don't think Steve is here, so that unfortunately. But I will add my.
Yeah, I think he's. Well, I think the issue seems to be that what you have. Do you want to give the thing that you later sign a different name? So because the evidence, as you said, is signed, and then that's why the claims that are signed become then evidence. But if you don't want to call the information that goes in there before it's signed, like it has some name, better has some name too. And like in this case, in the terminology section, is called statement.
Yeah.
And the software bill of material is referenced. But yeah, so like it's really a question, like how do you want to call that? He
so
says claim is a signed statement. That's not correct.
Yeah. So there is this thing called built evidence. I think that is a domain-specific term that is very common in software creation, and therefore evidence. But there's conflicts. Now, this was a proposal to change to that domain-specific language. I think we assessed that's not the way we're going to do this. We will probably use more qualifying words or substitute words at some point, and it will be a process definition first. Yeah, so that's I share your confusion here, but I think this is also, again, a pre-first working group meeting issue. So I think we can safely discard it.
But Roy has a comment.
Yeah, I always view the fundamental ledger or journal portion of SCITT and the underlying rats discussions as building blocks for the rest of the system. Having them squat on terminology when it becomes just the air we breathe is a little bit problematic, which is why I proposed writing up the use case terminology and then defining it from there, and then coming back to the lower. We don't talk about letters, we don't talk about words, we talk about sentences, and after a while everybody just ignores the fact that they're words, they're just sentences, right? But looking this, Yogesh, I'm really serious. I'd love to see people write the document instead of looking this from, as Ray correctly put it, from the bottom up. And since we're trying to solve this for various use case verticals, you have to look at it from the top down.
But my point is, yes, point is fair, but the problem is a use case document is taking specific use cases and then describing the problems or coming out from them are the set of problems or requirements,
Yeah, but
which are
Yogesh,
very generic in nature.
yeah, but just think about it. The U.S. government has already said, hey, there's evidence and there's build evidence. So we're not going to move that 800-pound gorilla off where they're sitting, right? We have to live with the terminology that the verticals are using. It's normal to not call a compiler just because we sat on the word compiler, right? We have to take into account where the use cases are already sitting.
Yeah, but do we need to worry about 10 different organizations, what the terms they are using before we lay out our terms? My concern is,
I think we have to take that into account. Hank is right. We call it build evidence. We call the output of a tool an artifact for caching purposes. Right? Those are things that pre-exist what rats by decades.
yeah, but I'm little nervous about that kind of thing because what we have is our ecosystem, the SCITT ecosystem, and SCITT ecosystem defines artifact means like this, and it's very clearly written in bold in architecture. So when you're reading the architecture, then you should try to relate the concepts based on the definitions which we are defining in the architecture, not trying to say what 10 other industry
Yeah, but
people
that's
are saying
exactly
that.
Yogesh. That's exactly how we got into this problem. We're saying, hey, rats and skit intersect with each other. Therefore, there's the 800-pound gorilla that we have to solve. And I'm going, in the grand scheme of things, it's not.
Well,
And
I'm
your opinion is your opinion. My opinion is mine. So we need to figure
yeah.
out, get the documents out there. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a vote. But I disagree with looking at specifically by saying, hey, rats and skit are there. Therefore, they dictate the terminology for everybody to use.
Yeah, I mean, it will be very hard if we, okay, we can just precisely for rats we can do, but if we trying to extend it to NTIA, CISA, and other standard bodies documents, then we will have really tough time defining something unique which they don't overlap with the existing
Yeah.
documents. I'm really concerned
So I
about that
think,
then. Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it's a show blocker. So, like Ray said, qualifying things first, then it's build evidence and it's a build artifact, and then we started with that. And if then over domains, we realize that if you do, I don't know, railways, construction, artifacts is unfortunately also very important and it's something entirely different again. We have to have it, call it a railway artifact. Then we have to qualify things or bring it in context. So that's the only thing we can do. Luckily for now, we have to only think only somewhat ahead, and that is the hardware supply chain that is relatively close to the software. I think there are a lot of attendees waiting for that step, and I think concerns from that application domain should be the loudest. Now, of course, I heard government's evidence and NIST, yes, bring them into context. They have software assurance and such terms already, and have also the use of the term attestation, which is really funny. And
Yeah.
so this is something we can't solve ever. There will be an abstract on overlap of terminology between bodies, and then we will qualify them if in doubt. And then in text, I hope that it will be comprehensive and intuitive. As I said, we can't move all the gorillas, but we can make people aware of them and maybe remove at least the ones inside the control of the IETF. That's possible, and then we go from there.
Dick, do you want to pile on to this discussion?
Yep, thank you, Hannes. So I'd like to say I agree with what Roy has stated about focusing on the use cases, because getting those use cases established will help us understand the problem space that SCITT needs to address. And until we know what those use cases are, we'll always be debating what the boundaries and scope will be of SCITT. So my suggestion is follow what Roy is suggesting, get the use case document defined, and then we can focus on solving the problem by getting the alignment we need based on the use cases. understanding the constraints that we have to live by, which are things like rats and so on and so forth. But I think if we can at least understand what those use cases are, now we can focus on solving that problem for the use cases. And with that, I'd like to ask, do we have an estimate or a goal set when we want to have the use case document at least to a reasonably complete point? Thanks.
I think Hank wants to respond to. Hank, is that true?
Hank is mute, it seems.
I'm not using this mute button anymore. I will always forget that I'm using that. Sorry. I thought it was cool. It isn't. There's a very obvious deadline. That is the ID submission cutoff date, which is, I think, at the moment, it's March 13th. So at March 13th, we must have submitted something. So we should at least be a week before that, because I think that's a Monday. So the Monday before that Monday, we should have agreement on all open issues or push them to the next iteration. So I would say the meeting on March 6th will be the meeting where we should decide what's in or what's out in terms of discussion for the IETF meeting in Yokohama.
But I don't think Roy is really saying we have to finish the use case document first before we can make some progress on the terminology. Roy, is that, or are you saying that?
And that's what I'm saying as well.
Well, I wasn't saying we had to finish them, which is why I wrote the other document on terminology saying, hey, this is how I view this vertical. And I was asking for other verticals so we can all put them together. I don't think we have to have a signed, sealed, delivered use case list to say, here's the proposed terminology.
And I would go further, Roy, and say it doesn't have to specify every single possible use case that SCITT might be used to solve, but at least needs to give us a starting point, a direction with maybe just, I wouldn't even go past 5 use cases. I'd keep it limited for this first go round to make sure that the end number we choose is going to help us set the stage for what SCITT actually can do in practice.
I agree.
Well, we have, obviously we have come some way already for the use cases, so that's good. Hank, you're in the queue.
Yeah, still exactly. So I understand that we want to have a crisp, and 5 sounds like an awesome number set of use cases. I think we cannot do this for IETF 116. What I would like to do for 16 is a target, and this is why I was replying in the way I did, because Dick was asking in the chat, do we have a target completion state for the use case document? And one completion stage, I'd say, is having all the use cases that are known and openly worked on today in a style and structure and comprehensiveness that is comparable and therefore uniform. And then we can go from there. Then we can try to merge 2 of them. I still have to schedule the events with Joshua that I promised last week, but I could only do 2 of the walkthroughs in 1 week last week. I didn't have time for more, but now I can do case studies with Joshua, for example, and we can walk through the item. I will send out, by the way, an offline email to you after this meeting, Joshua. And I would not target 5 use cases for Yokohama. That would be taking away a bit of this discussion of in the room, especially. Is this enough? Is this too much? How can we optimize this? I think that's a room discussion.
Yeah, but that's fair, Hank. I would agree that we don't want to limit discussion, but I think at the same time, I think if we can come to an agreement on what the initial, the very foundational use cases that are in scope for SCITT, whether that's 1 or 20, whatever that number is, that represents the initial goal for defining what a SCITT is and does. That's my opinion anyway. Thanks.
Okay. So what I get from this discussion about the terminology of the architecture document is that first of all, there are a number of issues related to terminology, like easily 5 issues, and some others may need to or have to be closed because they are already a little bit too old. But I also heard several people now saying that, oh, we can't really make progress on the terminology before we haven't finished or progressed the use case document. So in that case, should we take a look at the use case document again? I know, Henk, you are still on to the discussion with Monty on the IoT sort of firmware use case. So that's taken care of. We had Ray present his or post his use case. And then Joshua also wanted to contribute a use case. Joshua, remind us what that specific use case was about, or was it multiple use cases?
I think the action item I took was to make sure the some of the SIG-Store case studies were represented in the use cases. So
okay.
Less
Okay.
proposing a specific use case and more kind of reviewing what's there and trying to make sure the things described by SIG-Store case studies can be achieved with SCITT.
Okay, that's good.
Quick interruption, Joshua. You are located in the EU or in another time zone? I think I remember something.
Yeah, I'm
He's
UK.
in
Are you okay? Wonderful. Is Wednesday a good day for you?
Yes.
Okay, the rest we do offline.
Cool.
So I can target every item there. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Hannes, I would say your email to the list this morning was very insightful. You pointed out there are terms in the use cases that exist now that don't exist over in the architecture document. So I think this is doing these use cases first will flush out some of those issues so that we can, ensure we do have alignment between what the use case says is in scope, what the architecture says is in scope, and what the terminology is that relates, that ties all that together as glue. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just hoping that we would be a little bit faster on the use cases. Like last Monday, I had expressed the hope that we would have an initial version of the use case document already mid-February. But yeah.
Mid-January or mid-February, you mean?
February.
Okay.
Rather than
So we have time. We have time to catch up now and do something even more.
Yeah, and I can, REA can commit to providing some, support in that space to helping with the use cases. So we just need to know what kind of timeline everyone's looking at and what the scope is in terms of, how far do we want to go with the use cases. But we stand ready to support this effort fully. Thanks.
Okay. Should we give Ray a few minutes to talk about his use case and explain us on like what we will be looking at when we click at his Google document link?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. Ray, you said you posted your document. Is it on the mailing list? I just missed it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yogesh, maybe you can click on it. Let me look it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I?
You want me to
Let me
share
send
that as well? Okay, I can paste the link in this chat. That might help people understand. So this is the.
So Ray, do you want to share by yourself or do you want Yogesh to share?
I can. Well, can I share? Is that I try to share, but it's not doing it.
No, he has to approve it. I will stop sharing now. Now you request share.
Okay, he did. That should work.
Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Let me make this bigger. Essentially, so at the heart of this use case is this E2E security of valid images and how to bring them back. Basically bringing data from the voting machine or the scanner back so it's secured. Posting it into SCITT at the end of the day is not, get down here to the end and essentially talk about after the election, then, things need to be combined. And I have a separate, thing about this, a separate document about the use case for how they might be combined. And then because it's a lot of, in this case, it's a lot of data, and that there's individual zip files that are each very big. So it can't be all zipped into one thing. It's incompatible with the notions of, not completely, but somewhat, with the open container initiative type of thing where you want to put things in a payload. But the summary of the package data could certainly be submitted to the ledger.
Right.
The one thing, yeah.
Could you give an estimate of, you're talking gigabytes, terabytes in some of these things?
Yeah. So essentially,
could you put it in the Could you put it in the document?
Yeah, it is. And basically, they're usually 5 to 10 gigabytes per file. We like to go to because of just ease of handling at this point in the evolution of computer technology and the web and the cloud. And so for a given jurisdiction might have, there's about 50,000 images like maximum that we like to have per file. And then in jurisdictions, they usually have somewhere between 300,000 to the biggest in the nation is 4.5 million. So, and then nationally, there's about 4,500 districts, but most of them are small. This whole question about the size is something that I did put in a different document because it is a direct concern with SCITT. And let me just touch on the one issue, if you don't mind me going back into more of the weeds. But I start here and talk about the voting machine architecture, which is preferred. And this is kind of what you brought up, Hannes. I spent a bit more time talking about the fact that we would need to have a trusted core, and that preferably the ballot scanner in the voting machine would be have a hardware security manual, but further that that the machine can be decomposed into a document scanner and possibly a ballot aware tabulator. So today, these voting machines are all in one. So you have the scanner is usually bought from some other vendor inside, but conceptually, there's one computer that handles everything and it is ballot aware. So there's a bit of a security concern that I'd like to split this concept so that the scanner is not combined, either inside the machine, have them be separate, and then have a separate core that would be able to, that is, when the ballot comes in, it gets scanned and it gets secured before it's passed over to the ballot aware part of it, or they could be completely separate machines. But then once the ballot, yeah, sorry, I'm going too fast.
One question for you, related specifically about the big or the huge amount of data, is like that appears to be one of the requirements for SCITT, for a SCITT-based architecture, that it has to deal with kind of these external data items, so to speak, instead of lumping everything together in one data structure. And so
that's correct. Yeah.
Are there other so, like, sorry, I haven't read through it yet, and thanks for sharing, but are there other aspects or other requirements that you think are identified? Because that's something we should definitely highlight in a write-up.
Yeah, I had a long time ago, I made just the list of what the requirements were, but I was trying to look more carefully at this this flow to make sure that I knew what all the requirements were. The other thing, so lots of data, different files that are already zipped up that have, that need to be handled, but then grouped together as a logical group and by a single entity, and then, submitted to SCITT and locked in. All right. And then the other requirement is they may want to submit the, that is, it's a timing thing. So when the, when I was down here, when the ballots are scanned, they need to be, what we'd like to see is that the hash values of the signed hash. So the concept here is inside the scanner, there is a private key that's each one of the images gets secured with that private key and signed either individually, which was preferred for some reasons, and then as a whole, the whole thing signed, right? So everything is signed by this private key. It comes back, but then those individual COSI blocks probably are then posted, okay, in SCITT, so that, and by the way, this whole thing is air gapped. So the interaction that I saw with rats was kind of the concept I had when I read the rats things, was that it was mostly conceptualized for devices that would reside on a network over time, that would be accessed a number of times and have, periodic communications with that device. That doesn't happen. That everything is air gapped. We have a very limited time to send data back and forth. So it's an air gap situation. And so when those images come back, we would be able to post just the security information, the signatures to SCITT, rather than everything. So it might be some way to have an eventual, everything is there and available, but in time there would be an initial post of something that is incomplete, and it kind of, I'm not worried that this thing won't be satisfied, because it appears in the software world that's also going to be a requirement, because a lot of the tests come later, and so you want to post something and then maybe have tests that take time that are added later, and then maybe test houses that might test the software that's added on. By the way, all of this software, SBOM and security thing that we're working on, can be applied to the election, segment as well, because they do have software in these machines that needs to be secured in the same way. So I'm interested in all that as well. But I wanted to point to this one thing as you read through this, if you ever have time. I just need to settle this public key claim that I did not find in the RATS literature about how to send a public key back from the device and have it be basically, I'm thinking that it's this element that exists called the election management system, where it would maintain a database of public keys to be that are used by the scanners in the election. And that's what I need to sort of resolve. But so I don't want to take the time here to work on this unless you have an instant. But so maybe just send me, for people who are familiar with RATS, how to do this. Yeah.
So Ray, you should probably take a look at the confidential compute framework that Sylvan and his team have pushed out. They're using RATS to make the claims of how the device boots up. And then you're starting to get into a cross section here with the drone community of long-lived cert identities on devices as a way of identifying who actually signing content. So there's some intersection with these other technologies that sounds like it would be a perfect match for you.
So if there is, why don't you just send me that so I can review that? But basically, I see there's no problem with using this entity attestation token from RATS, but I couldn't find out how to do this public key claim. And if there's some way to do that in another, technology or something, then fine. But what I was saying is that here, likely the way to do this, if there was such a thing in rats, is that that when the scanner is provisioned by the EMS, which is the election management system, then and in a secure configuration like in the election office, then it's initialized using the flash memory device. So the flash memory device would be plugged into the machine and powered on, and it would initialize that memory, and then follow the passport operational model where then the device, once it had its initial information, formats and initializes it and provides the initial information, and then blah blah blah. Then it would the EMS would review from that and then write the certificate. I mean, this is just a wild guess on my part because I haven't implemented this before.
Ray, a question. You mentioned the air gap scenario, which is another one of the requirements that we discussed in previous meetings. At what point is the device air gapped? Is that like, because after all, like at some point in time you need to upload something to the SCITT registry, and you also, from the flow that you just mentioned, you obviously need to get some data provisioned onto the device and maybe off the device as well. So how is this air gap sort of life cycle, so to speak?
Okay, so the election offices are required to be completely air gapped. They can have an internal LAN to talk to scanners that might exist internally, like what they call central scanning operations, where the large scanners are LAN connected to their, typically sometimes very large computers that handle the tabulation. But then so they're air gapped, and the machines in the field are air gapped. So there's no internet connection at all, and until they actually package up the data at the end.
Okay.
So skipping down to after the election, so the data is returned to the EMS on hand-carried flash devices. Sometimes they allow modem transmission from the machines using cell mode. Sometimes they say, well, they're inoperable unless we attach them, or there's different arguments about this. But right now there is reluctance to have them attached to the internet, pretty much at all. And so these are hand carried, and then they essentially what we want is to have essentially assigned hash value for every image. Okay, so for central scanning operations, they also have this problem where, and there's been papers written on this. I have one in here that's called Unclear Ballot, where they go in and hack the image. So you want the image to be as much as possible unhackable, even if the driver, such that the driver can't be hacked to modify the image without detection.
Would what you upload, or sort of like the artifact that you upload to the SCITT registry, would that be a separate kind of?
Yeah, that
would
has
you
to be
upload
separate.
the whole sort of list of hash images, or what? Like when you say like previously mentioned, you upload, or you only put the hash in there, not into the SCITT registry, not the actual data, which is fine.
Right.
But
Yeah.
But how many would that be? One hash, or would that be? Well, here you say for each zip and CBR file. Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's it could be one, but then if it was just one, there would need to be the list of what it means. But essentially, all of these results would be on a jurisdiction website or another posting service. A lot of times they do use a different posting service because of just size. Their website doesn't handle it, and cost. So like a really good jurisdiction that is an example of San Francisco, where they post everything, and they're pretty big too. So they post their ballot images on, I think it's called sync.com. But then they have just a simple file, which is made with this tool called easy hash or something like that, and basically it gives the SHA 512 hashes for every zip file that they have of all of their images, and then all of their cast vote record files. Everything is in that this is a not a standard way of doing it, which is sad, because I want to drive it in that direction so that I can go to anyone's website and find the same listing of what their items are. Now that could be part of the SCITT definition, perhaps. I know that within things like the Open Container Initiative, they have JSON descriptors that describe the layers, or I guess now they're just calling them objects within there. Then the question is, do we want to try to put that into SCITT, or just consider that outside of it? I'm thinking it's okay to leave it outside the SCITT concept and pursue the packaging of data for these various needs as a separate issue, because I think it might bog down what you guys are doing with SCITT, because it doesn't. It is. I think it's kind of important. If you look at things like the NFTs, they have a similar thing where they use something like SCITT to manage the NFTs, and they have references to remote data, which might be pretty large, and they don't put the data into the registry. So that would be
Right.
that would be the other issue. The three issues then are the size of the data and where it is and how to list it, and the fact that it's air gapped, and the time wise where we want to send. But I'll tell you what, I'll resolve those requirements for SCITT again, because I had them listed, but I'll put them in here.
Perfect. Yeah, it's thanks for the write-up. We obviously have to read through it, and I will do so myself. I'm trying to find out whether I can answer your question. Kieran, you wanted the last 2 minutes.
So thank you, Ray, for the use case. That was very useful. Looking forward to reading that document. Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. We've formed a new SCITT community. I'm sure some of you are aware of it. The SCITT community will be complementary to the existing SCITT IETF working group. The working group is focused on specification development, building all the use cases, ultimately the architecture document, which hopefully evolves into an RFC and then a specification. SCITT community is more focused on the advocacy, outreach, testing, interoperability of implementations, prototyping, and all that, right? And tooling. As IETF itself points out, right, that for something to become a standard, we need at least two or more interoperable implementations. So the SCITT community's role is to sort of facilitate that, really help with the adoption of the specifications that we're developing here within the working group, right? It is open to public. New members are invited to join. I will send out an email to our working group with all the links and resources and everything. We're planning on a kickoff meeting this Thursday, so I'll be sending out an invite for that as well. Just wanted to give that, make that quick announcement here since we have everyone. Any questions or?
Oh, I was speaking to the muted microphone. Was there a question?
Wanted to know if anybody had any questions about this spin-off.
It was easy.
It's good that you guys sort of like want to gather those who or developers who want to work on early prototypes of what we are doing in the group. So that's excellent. So obviously for those people, that's the right type of meeting while we are making progress with the standards activities here in the group with the specifications. I hope that there's not too much sort of like energy drawn over to the other group so that we can still make some progress with the specifications.
Absolutely, yeah. Getting our use case document, architecture doc ready as as RFCs, that would definitely be the goal for IETF 116, right? That's the primary goal. The implementation is just to I think we're at a point where we can start collaborating sooner than later, and work on all those interoperability items, right? So I think that's a big goal for the community.
Cool. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good. So we have a few action items from this meeting. At the next meeting, we are going to have a short presentation from. Is it you, Joshua, who is going to give that presentation about the SIG store?
I think Zach is on the hook for that, and he's not here today.
Okay, that's great too. Perfect.
So Joshua, you just throw him under the bus. You say he's going to definitely do it.
Exactly. He's enjoying a national holiday, so he can suffer the consequences.
Perfect. Okay, we ran a little bit over time, so we have to finish here now. Thank you all for joining, and yeah, I hope to see some discussions on the mailing list, some progress on the use case document as we talked about.
Thank you, Hannes. Take care, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks again for the time.
Yeah, thanks, Ray.